think probably like a lot of kids, certainly those living in America in the early 60s, the first thing I ever saw, my parents showed it to me, was The Wizard of Oz. And I've referenced The Wizard of Oz, actually, in both of these two films. There's a moment in the film, it was in the trailer actually, where Colin, his character, is very, very depressed, and this little pair of blue shoes step right in front of him and click 3 times, and he looks up, and the world just becomes color, and he's, you know, overwhelmed by her sense of beauty. And there's a moment in Nocturnal Animals where Jake Gyllenhaal's character is holding a gun, and he says, "Nobody gets away with it," and then he says, "Nobody, nobody, nobody." And I just always loved that, no place like home, no place like home. You know, there's something significant about thinking that if you say something over and over and you believe it, that you can make it happen. And so that's an adult interpretation of memories of my earliest, the first film I remember seeing.
What point did you think that, yes, I want to become a... Was this idea to become a filmmaker always there, or was it something you came to quite recently?
It wasn't quite recently that I came to it. I would say the mid-90s was when I really realized that it was something I wanted to pursue. But I think I'm a natural-born storyteller. I think you either are or you aren't. I mean, as a kid, that was my favorite thing, was to entertain people and to try to get them to laugh and to tell a story. And I'm one of those people who believes in enhanced reality at a dinner party. If you're telling a story and it seems dull, just sort of, you know, make it up, embellish it, get people to laugh, sense the rhythm in the room. In that way, I'm a storyteller, and I think good fashion designers are storytellers too. You know, you have to have a point of view, and you have to be able to convey that, and it has to be consistent, and it has to speak, and it has to mean something. You can tell a story through fashion, but it is somewhat impermanent. You know, you can design something that's powerful for that moment, and the first time someone sees it, it's sort of jolting. You think, I don't know, do I like this? And then there's a rush of, wow, this is incredible. But it fades. You can later go to a museum and see all these beautiful clothes, and you can say, well, that was interesting, look how that's stitched, look how that's finished, that's amazing. But it doesn't have that power. It cannot make you feel what it made people feel the very first time they saw it. Whereas with film, you can put on an old film from the 1930s, and before long, if it's a well-done film, you're sucked right into it. You're emoting, you're laughing, you're crying, you're feeling with these people. And they're dead. They're all dead. The writer's dead, the director's dead, the actors are dead, everyone's dead. But yet, there it is, forever, forever, forever sealed. And it will be translated into whatever medium, in the future that you'll be maybe in 3D. And anyway, that's another discussion. I could go off on a tangent about where the future of entertainment's going to go. But if you're a person who likes to design, make things, build things, control things, I mean, film is the ultimate. You know, you are, in a sense, a god of your film. You're creating this world, and that's enormously appealing.
Unlike some first-time filmmakers, you had no fear about the best way to talk to actors because you'd done years of acting study yourself and scene study
years,
classes.
I don't know, years. But yes, I was at school. Do you want to keep asking your
question?
Well,
I'm just wondering how those classes, were helpful to you when it came to winning the confidence of actors like Colin Firth and Julianne Moore.
Acting classes were enormously helpful to me. I was an actor when I was in my late teenage years. I played this sort of boy next door, mostly in television commercials, here and in New York. Back in those days, the TV commercial world shifted from New York to Los Angeles with the seasons. And so I lived in both. And I hated being on the other side of the camera. I was way too self-conscious. And at that time in my life, I was cast principally because of my looks. My hair started receding. I was doing a television commercial for a shampoo, and the hairdresser sort of very cattily said to me when I was about 19, your hair's going. And then I realized after that, I would be on a set, the hairdresser would do my hair, I'd go in the corner and smush it down, and I remember hearing the director one time say on the other side of the camera, "What's going on with his hair?" And I was too self-conscious. I hated it. But I did, like all young actors, take a good number of scene study classes and sense memory classes and all those things. And so, of course, I remember those, and I understand what actors go through. And I think what they go through is incredibly difficult, challenging, and in a lot of cases, brilliant. So I have enormous respect for actors and for their the different processes that different actors require different things to create their very best performance. And when you're working with great actors, they know themselves better than anyone. They know how to give you their best. They want to give you their best. And so it's my job to support that, help that, guide that, direct that, but also give them the space to be able to give you their best performance. They want to win that BAFTA. They want that BAFTA. You give them the space and guide them in the right way, and they're going to give it to you.
Where did you find the self-confidence that you knew you could do it, and did you find that your friends were equally supportive?
I've always been one of those people that's believed that if you believe in something, and if you focus on it, and if you work really hard, and if you can visualize it very clearly, that you really can make it happen. And so when I decided that I wanted to make films, and specifically A Single Man, once I had locked onto that, I could see it so clearly in my mind. I didn't doubt that I could do it. And of course, in this industry, there's a saying, I don't know where it came from, that they can nice you to death. And it was true. All of my friends, and I have lots of friends in the entertainment industry, as a fashion designer, you come to know everyone in the entertainment industry because you dress everyone. So I knew Julianne. I made dresses for her for years. It was easy for me to pick up the phone and say, I have a screenplay, I'd love you to read it. I wrote this part for you, which I did. Or reach people. But everyone was so nice. Oh, that's so wonderful. You're going to make a film. Oh, you're going to be brilliant at it. It's great. And then after A Single Man came out and was received well and did well, people said, we thought you were a complete fool. We didn't think you were ever going to be able to pull that off. And I even had journalists, in fact, most journalists would say, how did it feel to know that everyone thought that you were crazy and that you couldn't do this? So it was a surprise to me. I just assumed everyone thought, I don't mean to sound like an egotistical ass, but I could see it so clearly.
You were talking before about, your early days as a commercial actor and the rejection and overhearing stuff. So now that you're a successful filmmaker, how do you feel when reviews sort of praise the visual style of your movies but totally ignore the narrative?
For me, visual and style has to support the story, has to support the narrative. The way people are dressed, the way a room looks, or the things in their hands, what they're doing, it's informing you of who these people are, what they're doing. And so style without substance for me in a film is meaningless. And I think there have been many, many directors who've been far more obsessive, Alfred Hitchcock for one, about the color of his leading lady's lipstick than I am. And so I think that to be a director, we are telling a story visually. This is a visual medium. And so to be concerned with the looks of things visually as part of the storytelling is natural. But maybe I'm just overly sensitive about it.
Both of your films are based on previously written material. So let's talk about the process there. How do you start bringing the written word to life?
Well, first of all, find good source material. I've written a couple of screenplays that I might make one of them that are original, but I don't think they're as strong. I seem to need great source material. So first find that. And when I was working on A Single Man I read when I was living in Los Angeles as a young actor at about 20 years old, and I became obsessed with it. I loved it. And I fell in love with the character of George. And I realized one day in my 40s when I was driving to my office here that I was thinking about George, and that I thought about this character all the time. He felt so real, like I was going to run into him somewhere in Los Angeles. And I realized, okay, I need to make this as a film. It's a very difficult book to adapt as a film. It's an inner monologue. A lot of what ended up on the screen is not in the book at all. And I was trying to adapt it literally because of my respect for Christopher Isherwood and for the book. And I was having dinner with Don Bacardi, Chris's longtime companion partner. They would be married in today's world, and explained this to him. And he said, let go of it. Make it your own. That's Chris's book. It's always going to be Chris's book. And now you need to make this your film and take what speaks to you from that and, feel free to adapt it and interpret it. And it was so liberating. And I did just that with A Single Man. And I did the same with this book, which is a wonderful book. It's called Tony and Susan. It was written in 1993 by a writer called Austin Wright, and it became Nocturnal Animals. And it is also quite liberally adapted, but the principal themes are still there. And the theme that attracted me to Nocturnal Animals was this one of our throwaway culture and the fact that we often throw people away. And I'm a very loyal person. I've been with the same person for the last 30 years, and I don't throw people away. I also loved this device of being able to communicate to someone in a more powerful way than you could in real life through a work of fiction. Finally, he's able to tell her, this is what you did to me, this is how it felt, in such a visceral way that expresses how he felt when she left him through a work of fiction in a more powerful way than he could have in real life.
Colin Firth
Yes.
won the BAFTA Best Actor Award for Single Man. It's a two-part question.
And the Venice Award.
Yes, and the Venice, and it kind of really changed the perceptions of him and his career out there in the world to a large extent. You were able to bring out that great dramatic acting. A two-part question: what did you see in him that the rest of us maybe didn't think of him as so obvious for that role? And second, how were you able to work with him to get his performance to such an acclaimed level?
Well, first, I was having a hard time casting that role after I had written it. I wrote Julianne's part for her, but I had not cast George. And I was at a party in London for another friend who's an actor who was appearing in a film that Colin was also appearing in. And I was standing chatting with him at the after party, and I just looked at him and I realized, oh my God, you are George. You are this character. I got in the car that night with Richard, who's now my husband, and shut the door to the car, and I thought, it's Colin, it's Colin. I have to get Colin, have to get Colin. Colin was George. Now this will sound silly, it'll sound like some sort of, astrology crazed person, but I'm a Virgo. Christopher Isherwood's a Virgo. Colin Firth is a Virgo. Our birthdays are almost right on top of each other. Talking to Colin, I started to realize that he and I share so many. We can go into a downward dark spiral so fast. Christopher Isherwood as well, our philosophies on spirituality. We were both at this sort of midlife crisis moment in our life, which is also very much about what the film is about. And is all I had to do, as I said, was give Colin the space. The performance was in him. Everything that was there was in him. So that story is really Christopher, overlaid with me, overlaid with Colin, and that ended up being the character of George. One thing that actors tell me I do that is at first disarming for them, but then they actually get into it, is I let the camera run. Usually I will talk to them about a scene, we'll shoot it, and when we're finished shooting it, I just don't stop, and they can hear it. And they don't know, what the fuck should I do now? And they often go into a place that if you just keep the camera rolling, that is so, it pushes them into a place that's often very, very real.
Tell us how that technique worked with Amy Adams, because for many of her scenes in Nocturnal Animals, she's reading a book, but you can see so much emotion on her face.
Amy, as an actress, I look into her eyes and I am so moved. As an actress, as a human being, she has eyes that are incredible. She also has the ability to telegraph. I mean, that's a brilliant acting feat, to be able to telegraph your thoughts. And I knew that we'd be looking at her, reading or just reacting for a good part of the film. And so casting Amy was key.
How much of you was in that character?
Well, as Jake's character says, nobody ever really writes about anyone but themselves. And I don't think that just applies to writing. I think it applies to painting or to, anything that you do that's artistic, because we are all everything in the world is filtered through our perception of it. And when we express something, it is somewhat autobiographical because it's our need to connect and to express. So Amy's character is very, very much, there's a lot of me in her character, in all of the characters, except of course the killer. But Amy's character, absolutely, because I have struggled with coming to terms with materialism. Now that may sound strange, coming from the mouth of someone who actually helps create this constant stream of products that we consume in our current culture, but maybe that's really the reason, is I have been so close to it for so long and struggled with sometimes being quite disgusted by it, but ultimately coming to terms with the fact that we are material creatures. We do live in a material world. Beauty can give us great pleasure. Certain fabrics feel feel wonderful, but we have to keep it in perspective. We can't lose sight of spirituality, human connection, your friends. And at times in my life, I have lost that. And Amy's struggling. Amy's character, Susan, is struggling with that. And so there's a lot of I'm past what she went through. I had my midlife crisis maybe 10 years ago, and she's right in the middle of one, or nearing the end by the end of the film.
How much of a perfectionist are you when it comes to being a filmmaker, and how easy is it to let your film go, or are you still constantly editing up until the last moment?
God, can anyone let their film go? Can anyone let their writing go? I don't know. I think a film, and listen, I realize, and I'm very fortunate to be here, I've only made 2 films, but for me, they find themselves. It's like they get to a point where I spent 7 months editing this one and 5 or 6 months editing A Single Man. But you click, 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 you change things, click, 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 click. And then one day when you try to change something, you end up putting it back. And you try to change another scene and you end up putting it back. And it just kind of settles into what it wants to be. The same when you're writing. I think if you've set it up properly, the end should almost write itself, and it should seem inevitable and yet surprising. And it should be something that can only end that way. And I don't know.
You financed A Single Man yourself. Was that so you could have total control?
At first I was looking for financing for A Single Man, and it was right before the crash of not September 11th, the crash of 2007, 2008. And I couldn't find financing for the film. And a friend of mine who's, David Geffen, said, if you believe in yourself, pay for it yourself. There's no better investment than yourself. Pay for it yourself.
Having established yourself as a filmmaker who really sort of knew what he was doing, when you come to put together Nocturnal Animals and the financing of it, was it the same thing? Or like, I'll finance this myself, or did you try and sell off the territories right away?
In this case, it was the same thing, and I had appreciated very much having the complete freedom that I had with A Single Man. And I'm not young, so even though I'm new to filmmaking somewhat for the last 7 years, I'm in my mid-50s. I've got a lot of experience about how I need to work, and I'm not great with a lot of voices in my head. I'm very collaborative, but I need to be able to reach out to people whose opinion I respect and ask them, their thoughts, rather than sort of being imposed certain things. So I knew that I had to remain independent for this. In this case, I hired a foreign sales broker, and I decided to finance it myself, but mitigate my exposure by selling off the foreign territories, as they're called, which do not include America, and went to Venice, went to Cannes, and rented a ballroom and put together a quick visual presentation and delivered a small audio presentation. Everyone in the room had read the screenplay, then took private meetings with people and began to get bids in for all of those territories. At the time, Focus Universal had been to the presentation and wanted to buy, the distribution rights for the world, and I said no. And they came back, and I said no, and they came back, and I said no, and eventually we worked things out, and it's been a great partnership.
As well as a great producer, director and writer, you really have an incredible knack for casting. I think back to our Nocturnal Animals Q&A, and we see Aaron Taylor-Johnson's terrifying performance, as a Texas vicious redneck. Whether he's sitting on the toilet or tied up on a bed, he's still incredibly scary. And then he comes out and does the interview, and he's a perfect English gentleman. So what do you see in him? I mean, I know he was like a friend of yours, but was he kind of offended when you said, what? You'd be a great psychopath?
I think it's because he was a friend of mine that I was able to see the psychopath in him. That will sound very strange, but if I were to have just looked at his body of work as an actor, I would possibly not have said, wow, he could be right for this. But I was out to dinner I've been friends with Aaron's wife for at least 20 years, and we were out to dinner, and Aaron was telling some story, and he's a great mimic, and he snapped into something for a minute, and I don't even remember what the story was about because I was so riveted, and I thought, oh my God, you would make the sickest, most twisted, psychopathic killer ever, and original. You know, I wanted him to be original. You know, this guy fancies himself a 70s rock star. You probably didn't notice it in the film because you were busy looking at him on the toilet. But next to him is a red electric guitar. His fingernails are grown out because he plays the guitar. He's got the green boots. He's got the hair. He has a swagger. He has a GTO. So I wanted to build a story around, you know, I didn't want him to just be a stereotypical psychopathic killer. And Aaron was flattered and very into the idea because he's a great actor and a chameleon, a real chameleon, and I think thrives on the opportunity for that. So he was excited. His wife was less excited. She had to live with the fingernails for months and months and the hair and the, watching Jeffrey Dahmer videos. And, no, I mean, he really did his research. I mean, he was really researching you know, which is part of the charm. You know, many of these serial killers, you know, they can be very charming at certain times. It's how they pull you in, and that was part of the character development for this character.
Are you one of those directors like Scorsese, for example, who gives a list of films for their cast to watch in preparation, or do you leave them alone to do their own sort of prep? And second part of the question, what's your rehearsal process?
I don't give them a list of films, but we do talk very specifically. I also, when I'm writing, I put together binders and binders of visual images so that when I'm writing I can write little things in that hopefully give everything texture. Aaron on the toilet, for example, in the book we find him on a baseball field in a baseball jersey. That was not going to be cinematic or remotely interesting to me. And I had actually Googled while I was doing photo research. This is true, it's not Texas bashing, but white trash Texas Hicks. And up came pages and pages when you click on images of, you know, and I was going through them and I found a real life person sitting on a toilet just like that in front of a mobile home with a beer and a phone, and I thought, okay, this is genius. This is how we have to find this character. So when I talked to them, I put together boards of mood and feeling and everything, and you know, obviously they read the script quite a few times, we go over it, we talk about it, and then I talk to them and show them, you know, visual imagery, and I don't give them a stack of films to watch. And what was the second part of your question?
Your rehearsal process.
Rehearsal. Oh, come on. You don't get rehearsal anymore, I don't think, with great actors who are highly in demand. I mean, you're lucky if you get a few hours. With Colin and Julianne, Colin and maybe had longer, but Julianne we had maybe 3 hours for that film. And this as well, very, very short, maybe half a day if you're lucky. You don't get a lot of rehearsal. I don't, you know, with actors.
At the start, you were talking about Wizard of Oz and how even something you saw as a small child remains such an influence on your filmmaking. So who are the filmmakers that influence you?
Well, specifically for this, if you're talking about references or filmmakers, I mean Hitchcock, obviously, Kubrick. There's even some Peter Bogdanovich in there, Last Picture Show. I sent our sound designer, I said, look, just listen to a Last Picture Show, listen to the wind, listen to the way it feels. We need that sort of desolation in those moments where we are out in West Texas. And I took even the texture from the pool, billiard house or shop, whatever you call it, the pool hall. In the Last Picture Show, there's this amazing texture on the wall, which I then replicated for the scene, for the place where the crime actually takes place. You know, it's hard, I think, as a filmmaker to cite your inspirations, because if you're someone who loves film, you just drink all of this in. As a fashion designer, we become very, very, very well-versed isn't the right. We research film all the time because when we're building a collection, it's often one of the things that we work with. I remember doing an Yves Saint Laurent collection that was based on the bitter tears of Petra von Kant, Fassbinder. So we have an enormous, because you're constantly pulling images, pulling mood, pulling spirit. As a filmmaker, though, I suppose my soul, and this will probably surprise you given Nocturnal Animals, might be George Cukor, and you know, old Hollywood 1930s films, because you'll think this is strange, but they just make you feel like the world is okay and that it's all going to be fine, which we need to feel right now.
It's exciting to think what you might do next in your film career. You seem to have so many possibilities. So which direction do you want to head in next?
I don't know. You know, working on a film, for all of you many of you I'm sure worked on a film, you know, I can't let go of it until we're finished with this part of the process, the promotion of it. And, you know, then I need a little space and think, okay, what do I want to say next? Because that's the important thing. I'm not young. I have only so many films left in me, and they each need to be important. They each need to be you know, something that I feel is important to express. So I don't know yet.
In conclusion, how do you reflect on this journey from the starry-eyed kid watching Wizard of Oz to here you are giving a masterclass on filmmaking, and how much pride do you take in that journey?
Oh, I take tremendous pride, but still the masterclass thing is kind of freaking me out. I think let's just call it a conversation. I don't think I'm prepared to give a masterclass, but thank you for having me to one. Yeah, you know, I think in life when you are able to live out your dreams and they really do come true, I mean, it's an incredible feeling. So I'm very, very fortunate and very lucky and very appreciative of that. And I try to be appreciative of that every single day.
From me, Sandro Monetti, and all at BAFTA, thank you very much to Professor Tom Ford.
Professor, thank you. Thank you very much.